I
Oh, I'm
don't know,
sorry.
man.
I'm sorry. I
I
had you
don't. I mean, I
muted.
just
I had you muted for stream. Could you just repeat your name and age for the stream and the topic you wanted to talk about?
yeah, yeah. Sure, sure. It's Fabio, 24, and systemic racism.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Um, I don't know, man. I don't agree. I don't agree. I think the country used to be very racist. That's probably true. It's definitely true. But I think that in the latter half of the 20th century, things got a lot better. Obviously post Civil Rights Act, I think things got a lot better. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know what people on the left exactly are talking about. So I don't know if you have any like points that you don't want to bring up.
Sure. What do you believe systemic racism to be?
Well, I guess when people on the left say systemic racism, they're looking at like these disparities that we see in society, and they're saying that that's happening either because of like let's say bad downstream effects from historical injustices, or like because of implicit biases happening in the systems today.
Okay, and you don't believe that there are implicit biases that happen in our current systems?
I tend not to. Okay, well, no, that's not exactly true. I think that if they do, oftentimes they're more likely to exist in the form of like anti-white racism, but
Mm.
not necessarily against like minorities. No.
Okay, have you ever heard of the Veil of Darkness study?
I'm familiar with it. I'm pretty sure. Is that the one where they look at all these traffic stops and then the disparity sort of cease to exist at nighttime?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like that's sort of like a once
This
again,
wouldn't
that could be
be
other things, right? This
this
is
wouldn't
assuming
well
that
no,
the
the
re
study well wait, the study accounts for like everything else it could be, right? The study accounts for all of
how
these
so?
things.
How so?
Well, have you read it before?
I mean, I've heard about it. I haven't actually read it specifically, but I've heard like the concept of it.
Okay. So what things do you think the study would need to take in account for you to believe in the study?
I mean, I guess just other things that could other things that cops would be pulling you over for, right? That would be like I said, something like speeding,
They
um,
account for that?
something like I don't know, like license plate being valid.
They account for that?
Um, what about I mean, just tell me. I don't know. Tell me the variables that they account for, and I mean, I'll say if it makes sense or not.
Well, they account for like everything. That's why this is such a good study. They take like every possible variable and they put it into the mix, and they've still found that when it comes to drivers being pulled over, black drivers are pulled over significantly less at nighttime than their white counterparts. Or I'm sorry, not than the
I
white
would
counterparts. They're pulled over less at nighttime, significantly less compared to how much they're pulled over during the daytime. Which in the daytime we see a
right.
massive disparity between black and white drivers when it comes to pull over. We see that go away at night.
Right. I guess I don't know. I find that kind of hard to believe because I don't know if you could take into account all of the differences. I mean, there's other things like seatbelt usage, texting while
You
driving,
you wouldn't
drinking
see
while
seatbelt
driving.
usage at night.
Well, yeah, but I mean, no, that would be to my point, right? Because I mean, that's something that a police officer could see during the daytime,
Well,
and it
they're
would make
they're they're
logical
not
sense.
going to take that. They wouldn't take that stop then. They analyzed the reasons given for the stops. They threw out stops where it was like where it was things like that, where it was something else that was like they wanted to look at the factors leading to the pullover. So because you can't see the seatbelt at night either, they can't use this as a factor for the pullover.
I don't know if I really understand that. I mean, I don't know. To me, it just makes more sense because minorities are just more likely to break the law. I don't know. I
That's
would
not
have to
true.
actually see the study. Uh, I would just have to actually see that particular study.
I want to just address
Um,
something. This idea that minorities are more likely to break the law is just not true.
Certain traffic stops.
Yeah,
Excuse me. I mean, no, yeah, definitely that is the case. I mean, they're
it's
more
not
likely
actually.
to speed on average, to not
It's
wear
not
their
true.
seatbelts, to text while driving.
That's not true.
Well, why do you say that's not true? I mean, I have studies that say that is
because
true.
statistically it's not. When we look at like the actual statistics uh of like pullovers and like who's actually charged with what, like it's not true that minorities are more likely to speed. Be like that's not. There's no correlation here between being a minority and speeding.
I have studies that show that though.
Sir, which ones?
Okay, give me a second. I'm just looking through my looking through my little folder that I have here. You know, there's like a 2002 study that I. Okay, let's see this one here. So this is a 2002. This here says the racial profiling myth debunked. This is from the City Journal website. Okay, is there any way I could send you links?
I've already pulled it up. This isn't a study.
Yeah,
This
no,
is
yeah, that's
this is
correct.
just
I think
a
this is just an article.
yeah.
Hang on a second. I do have. I don't know if this one's a study. Anyways, yeah, that article just showed that they were twice as likely to speed. Blacks were twice as likely to speed than whites.
Yeah, this article isn't sourcing anything.
Okay.
Like they're just
Study
making a
racial.
claim.
Okay, so type in studying racial profiling in North Carolina. It should be a study from 2003. Which I believe found the same thing. By the way, can they see what you're searching up on? Like, can your viewers see what you're searching up on?
Yes.
Okay, all right, yeah, no, just to make sure, because you know when you're searching up, I mean, maybe it'll get silent.
So this study did found that there was racial disparities in the actions of highway patrol officers. A study by researchers from North Carolina State University found a small degree of racial disparity in the actions of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
Wait, are you reading the second one that I sent you?
Yes.
Yeah, but we're talking about the level of speeding, right? They find that there were African Americans are more likely to speed.
Yes, but the reason for talking about the level of speeding is to talk about why are they getting pulled over more. This is saying there is a disparity and that there is a racial disparity in who gets pulled over.
Well, that one was just to address like the fact that they speed more. I mean, there's other reasons why people could be getting pulled over, like the other ones that I named.
In
like
focus groups
more like
conducted by the researchers, some officers indicated that cognitive bias, the perception of race or ethnicity as a reason for a person's behavior, does not affect their behavior. Some officers said that they know whether they will write a citation, issue a warning, or give a verbal warning before they know who is driving. Other officers said that they decide that actions take based on the circumstances stop, including the demeanor of the driver. For these officers, cognitive bias is possible. Well, obviously, they wouldn't admit to that. Where does it say here that Black people are more likely to commit traffic offenses?
where it says findings, I believe.
People who are more than 100 miles per hour reported more speeding. Well, they drive more.
Yeah, you see that right there. Report more speeding and risky driving behaviors.
Well, wait, this
And
is a
such a
survey.
derivative,
This isn't actually looking at the raw data. This is just surveyed people, right? They called people and surveyed. I want to see like the data from actual traffic stops. If we're going to talk about who's committing the offenses more, a survey wouldn't tell us this. A survey is just going to tell us what these people, what these few people are saying, right? Do we have a study that's not a survey based one?
I don't know if I have a study on hand for actual. I know there are studies that show that just directly show, like for instance, like they'll just actually. I think there was a study that literally puts like cameras inside these inside like police officers' cars just to see exactly who was actually speeding and if it like closed the disparity between like the widening gap and the people who were being pulled over, and it did. That's a study I've heard of. I don't know if I have the actual like link to that. But I don't know, man. I don't know why. Hmm. I mean, yeah, if you want to take this as evidence, um, and I don't have the other study on hand.
Well, again, it's not
Um,
that it's that this isn't looking at the empirical data. This is just looking at a survey that they gave a couple people, and we don't even know what the survey questions are. Like, there's a lot that I would have to take on good faith on this without knowing the intricacies of like the questions they specifically asked people, who they surveyed, things like that. It's not giving me the raw data of traffic stops. And when we look at traffic stops, we would assume, right, that the people who are on the
mhm.
road more are the ones who are committing more of the offenses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So white from what I found, white drivers account for 50 almost 50% of motorists. They only receive 36% of traffic tickets. Are we saying that there's some
Right.
or that there what would the reason be that black drivers would commit more traffic offenses?
I don't know. I'm just saying that I have some studies which seem to suggest that like minorities do
Thank
break
you
the
for the
law
Cash
more
App,
often.
Chris. Miss you too. I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Say that again.
Oh, uh, oh yeah. I'm just saying. I seem to have some studies that seem to suggest that the minorities are breaking the law at higher rates.
Why
Um,
though? Why would they be doing
I know
this?
that you. I have no idea. I'm
Okay,
not gonna lie to you.
but
I
see,
have no idea.
we're not doing a correlation. So we know that black people are pulled over and ticketed more, but we're not asking the question of why. Is the reason that black people just have uh, a propensity to speed more or to do more traffic stops, or could there be a reasoning in the biases of police why black people are specifically ticketed more and pulled over more, even though they don't make up the majority of people on the road?
I mean, I mean, like I said, I think that they are breaking the law more. So I mean, to me, it makes sense. I understand that
Are they
what I've shown
breaking
you
the
so
law
far.
more, or are they just pulled over? Are black drivers more likely to be pulled over than white ones? So the white ones are getting away with it more. This is why where the Veil
I
of
don't really
Darkness
think that's the
study
case.
comes in. Well, this is where the Veil of Darkness study comes into play. This is the whole point of the Veil of Darkness study, is that they show that black drivers are being targeted for the color of their skin, because at nighttime they are no longer pulled over at rates remotely as high as they are during the day. This study is not just a survey based study, it's a study of 95 million traffic stops. 95 million to come up with this data. They analyzed all of these. The Veil of Darkness study is the one that is giving us the hard data on the biases in policing.
So for mine, like I said, I'm not. I actually had never heard that it took into account all these other things. But I do know that the Veil of Darkness studies, these types of studies have been done for like a few decades now, and I'm pretty sure that they've actually had just conflicting results. And I think older ones actually just found that there was no gap.
There
Um,
was no study even remotely close to the thoroughness and the capacity of the Veil of Darkness study. We've never had a study that close to that.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure about that one. I would need to actually like look into the study that you're talking about, and go over like all those variables that you're saying it adjusts for. Um, I'm just not aware of that. I mean, if there's anything else that you want to point to, because you were saying how like are police officers just more likely to actually pull over minorities, or I guess if we want to talk about black people specifically, and then like I guess ticket them for it. Um, I don't really know why we would assume that, like why we would assume police officers have like a bias against black
Because we
people.
did a study of 95 million traffic stops and found a giant disparity in every single region. That's why. I'm not making the assumption and then looking for data to fit my assumption. I looked at the data and then made the correlation via what the data showed, which is a bias towards black drivers who will get pulled over more often when they can be seen. That's how looking at this data and correlating a correlation and a causation would work here.
Hmm. Sure. Well, like I said, I don't. I would have to go with that one specifically. You could be making a good point. I'm not sitting here and saying that this it's invalid. You could be making a good point here.
And I'll ask you another question. Why is
Sure.
it that white Americans are arrested for drug use at about 70%, if I'm remembering the number correctly? I'll pull it up. Yeah, they make up 70% of all drug arrests, but only make up 30% of people in prison on drug charges. Whereas black Americans
I'm
make up
sorry.
27% of drug arrests, which 70 and 27% fit pretty in line with population. They make up 27% of drug arrests, but make up 70% of the people in prison on drug charges. What would be the reason for this disparity in the prisoner population?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
What would be the reason for the disparity in these differences in drug charges to drug convictions? What would be the reason if not for inherent bias and systemic racism?
You're saying that there's a difference in their arrest rate for drugs and the conviction rates?
Correct. And we know,
Um,
based on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, that even when we account for same crime type as well as socioeconomic conditions, black people are charged about I think it's like 13 times more harsh than their white counterparts. What would be the reasons for these if not for systemic racism?
You said 13 times more harshly. What do you mean?
Yeah, so they receive longer prison sentences and they receive more harsh prison sentences. So they'll be sent to like more harsh prisons, or they'll be sent to like, comparatively to their white counterparts, or they'll be sentenced longer than their white counterparts for the same crime type, same offense type, so first time offender or not, and when they're from the same socioeconomic background.
Well, I mean, the idea that when you adjust for those variables, that white and black people or rather, excuse me, black people are sentenced to higher prison sentences. I have a meta-analysis which suggests that that's not true,
Sure, what is it?
or which says that that's not true. It is. Let me just put up the actual. It was from 1998. It says Race and Sentencing, a meta-analysis of conflicting empirical research results.
Do you recognize how a study from 1998 would, in my opinion, be less viable than the U.S. Sentencing Commission report from like last year?
I don't see why.
You don't see why 1998 numbers would be less viable than 2023 numbers?
Not really, especially when like I would assume there was more racism a few decades ago. I mean, maybe implicit racism or something like that.
Wait, okay. What was the name of your study?
Race and Sentencing, a meta-analysis of conflicting empirical research results. It goes over 40. I believe it's 40 different of these sentencing studies. Because I know, like when we're talking about the sentencing disparity studies, there's a lot of studies that show just like conflicting results, right? There's some that show that black people are sentenced to higher sentence lengths, some that show that it's neutral, some that show even white people are sentenced higher. And so, like, since you have conflicting results, it would be best to aggregate all of them just to see what the overall literature says. Were you able to find it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say we've got more meta analyses that are looking more deeply into these variables than this one did. From there's a few things wrong with the age of the study. One, our prison population is significantly higher than it is now. So the when we look at the per capita numbers this study does, those numbers are vastly different now than they were in when this was done, which was, what did you say, 1998?
Yeah.
Vastly different. The The prison population between 1998 and now is staggeringly different. And then
You said there's
there
a
have
lot more
just
per capita now?
well, yeah, there's much more people in prison, so those numbers are going to be larger.
Sure. Sure. I don't know, man.
Specifically when we look at like incarceration numbers, there's a giant influx around the early 2000s. Like we see a big influx of people in prisons. So I would say that we're going to be looking at different numbers there. It doesn't seem like this. I mean, I'd have to look at every study that they're referencing. But when we look at the actual data given to us currently by the U.S. Sentencing Commission, when we look at the actual aggregate data that they provide, we do see these disparities even in same crime type and same socioeconomic background. When we like look at these disparities from them.
I don't know, man. This is a meta-analysis. I don't really see why there would be a big difference.
Is that a joke?
No, it's because like I said, there's conflicting results, and there has been a lot, especially with these sentencing studies. So I'm sure I could find you more in more recent times. I don't have them on hand. More meta-analyses in more recent times.
I mean, I do. Here's one from 2005 that analyzed 71 published and unpublished studies, and the analysis indicates that African Americans generally are sentenced more harshly than whites. The magnitude of this race effect is statistically significant, but small and highly variable.
Right. So like
that's from 2005.
There is conflicting results. That's the thing about it, right?
Well, okay. But this is what's frustrating is when given with conflicting results, you just go, I don't know, man. Like that's.
I mean, no, but like that's what we have to do. If there's conflicting results on the overall literature, we can't say
yes.
For sure,
if there's conflicting results in some of these analyses, I'm then going to go to the governing body that is sentencing people and keeping track of those sentences and see from the aggregate data how often people are sentenced. Here's the fun part about the U.S. Sentencing Commission. You can look at the number of people sentenced based on crime type, crime level. You can look at all of this, and it still shows a disparity between black and white offenders.
So I mean, back to your arrest and conviction rate disparity. I have a study from 2013 that found that when you adjust for things like IQ level and also something called lifetime violence in this study, that those disparities become statistically insignificant.
Using IQ level to determine whether someone will commit a crime is a nonsensical thing that most people don't like. Most of the things don't look at. But what is the name of the study?
Well, I mean, I understand why you would think that, but I guess for whatever reason, it seems to.
It's not why I would think that. We know that IQ is kind of bunk when we're looking at things like this, right? Because IQ as a variable is like, for instance, let's grant you something that, hey, maybe IQ is lower in the black population, so therefore black population is committing more crime. Why would IQ be lower in the black population? Do you believe that black people are just genetically predisposed to be stupider?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just saying that this study takes IQ as a variable, and for whatever reason,
I understand that. But based on the larger context of what we're saying, if IQ is a variable in crime, and we're saying that black people commit more crime, we're making the conclusion off of these things that black people would have a lower IQ. So either two things are happening. Either you believe that black people are genetically predisposed to have a lower IQ, or there's some sort of material conditions that black people live under that cause them to have lower IQs. It would have to be one of those two things.
I don't really know anything like that. I can show you the study though.
Well, this is just a logical trajectory of where this data would lead. Do you believe black people commit more crime than white people?
That seems to be what most. I mean, even though we don't have like all the data, it seems to be what most data says. Yeah.
Do you believe
like per capita
that lower IQs lead to people committing more crime?
I guess it's possible. I never really thought about it. I guess it's possible. I don't know. What do you think? Do you feel like
no? I think IQ doesn't have anything to do with it. I think it's the material conditions that you live under. I think it's
Well,
mostly poverty.
that could be possible, but I don't know, dude. I feel like I don't know if I have the highest IQ. I feel like I'm more likely to commit a crime than Einstein. But I mean, I don't. Okay, what were you saying?
I said it's well, Einstein helped commit one of the biggest crimes in the history of the human world, but that's
You know
neither
what
here
I
nor there.
mean, Nikola Tesla. Any high IQ person.
Nikola Tesla also committed a bunch of crimes.
All
This is why
right,
I'm saying
bro. All right.
IQ is not
Listen.
IQ is nonsense when it comes to this, right? What actually determines whether somebody is most likely to commit crime is looking at the material conditions that they live under. When we're talking about crime, especially the crime that we're talking about, which is going to be more blue collar crime, right? Uh, these crimes happen around impoverished areas. So impoverished areas, you're going to have people that are more likely to commit offenses. Would you agree?
Uh, I mean, there is a correlation. I know that impoverished areas do tend to have higher crime rates, but I don't know if that's directly because of like the poverty. Um, I think that if you're talking about like a third world setting, that could make sense to me because like if someone is literally like homeless, starving, and if they don't steal food like right now, they're gonna starve. But I don't know if that doesn't really apply to America, right? Generally
Why
speaking,
do
we're
people
not
wait?
talking about.
Most American crimes are tied to poverty. For instance, burglary. Why do people burglarize?
Maybe because they want to steal something that they thought was looks cool. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure.
Can we be in good faith here? If I'm robbing someone, what do I plan to do with the things that I robbed?
Use them? What do you? I don't
Homie,
understand.
homie, this you are being incredibly bad faith right now, and it's kind of a little frustrating. I will
I mean,
just
I
connect the dots, I guess. Almost exclusively burglaries, theft, armed robbery, these are to generate wealth. These are things that people are doing to make money. It's not just because I saw something cool and I wanted it. Sure, some people do that, but the overwhelming majority when it comes to burglaries are to resell the item you stole or to steal money or valuables so that you can have money.
sure, but I guess the question would then become why do people want a lot of money?
Well, it's
Um,
not about wanting a lot
and
of money, it's about wanting money at all, right? When we look at like burglary and theft, these are typically committed by people on lower income brackets. When we like look at the disparity of like people who are doing it and people who are arrested for it, these are people who are in harsher socioeconomic conditions.
sure, but that's just like a correlation you're making, and then you're inferring their reasoning for it. We don't know the actual reasoning,
Well,
right?
I'm not inferring the reasoning from like nonsense, right? Like we've studied poverty-based crimes for years.
Uh, okay, and you're saying that what are you saying that they're like asking for the people their reasoning? It's like self-reports. Is that what you're saying?
Typically, to know why somebody would do a crime, you have to take what they say the reason they did the crime is.
I would, yeah, but it's not obvious that people necessarily understand themselves. I don't know. I feel like that's sort of shaky. But basically, you're saying that the reason why these people are stealing the stuff is to, I guess, sell the stuff they're stealing, and then make more
It's
money.
for wealth. If you go to any criminal justice course, the first thing they're going to tell you is that crime is typically born from poverty. Like blue collar crimes tend to be bred from poverty. We can even see this when we look at correlations to violent crime. For instance, the domestic violence rates are tied very heavily to the unemployment rates. When people are unemployed, specifically men, they tend to commit more domestic violence because of the stressor of being impoverished. We have multiple studies that have analyzed this.
Okay. So what was your overall point though
My overall
before?
point is if we agree that there is nothing inherent in black biology that causes them to commit crime, then there has to be another reason, some socioeconomic or social reason that black people commit crime. I would say that
Sure.
socioeconomic reason is bred specifically currently from 70 plus years of redlining, shoveling black Americans into neighborhoods with low with low income jobs, shoveling them into neighborhoods with low valued property, to which their schools are going to be underfunded considerably compared to their white counterparts that were living in the suburbs. The admitted shoveling of drugs into these neighborhoods by the CIA, like literally admitted to shoveling drugs in these neighborhoods to get more convictions out of Black Americans. Like all of this happening between the 30s to the late 90s. Right? I would say this is the
Oh,
reason why we see these disparities, as well as the inherent bias from people like Reagan and Nixon, who quite literally, and this is again all admitted to, purposely created campaigns to be propaganda campaigns to paint Black people as criminals. Like they purposely did it. Their administrations have
okay.
admitted to doing it.
Okay, so a couple of things. I have to leave soon because I have to go soon. I you went over a lot of points right there. I guess we could talk about one of them before I go. I guess like education or whatnot. Um, I don't know if I agree with you though about what you said there at the end, but I do want to talk about the education thing. Um, so when we're talking about like educational funding, you do know that like for the past few decades, at a per pupil basis, um, it's been pretty equal at the national scale. And actually, Black students they have like 1% higher per pupil funding than even white students do,
This is
right?
not
So
true when we
uh,
look at the aggregate data.
no, it is true.
It's
I don't know
not.
if you would take like data from like the Heritage Foundation. Maybe you'll say it's biased, but I don't know. I think it's pretty thorough.
No, in research done in like 2019 specifically, we found that in areas that are in high poverty districts serving mostly students of color, they receive about $1,600 less per student than the national average.
No, but I mean the research that I'm talking about is going in aggregate what's happening. So like in some states, it basically says that Black students will be funded less than white students will, but then in other states, it finds that Black students are funded more than white
Yes, but
students are.
when we average this out, we find that on the average, on the national average, Black students are funded less nationally on the average.
N-
So we can pinpoint
No,
areas where this, yes, it is. I can pull you up. I can pull you up reports of this like currently.
I don't know. Here, do you want to look at the research that I'm referring to?
Sure.
Okay. It was from the Heritage Foundation. I think it was 2000, and yeah, it's a little. It's
A
not as recent
conservative
as what
think
you said.
tank.
It's like
Yeah.
a 2008 study. Um, yeah. No, excuse me, it's a 2011 study. Yeah. So it is. It's called "The Myth of Racial Disparities in Public School Funding." It was from 2011. And just let me know if you find it.
I've already got it.
Okay. This study did find that Hispanic and Asian students were funded a couple percentages less than white students, but Black students were funded 1% more. I mean, I don't think there's a big difference between all of them, anyways. Um, I don't think that would make a big difference.
Yeah, it just seems like the author is not taking data from the actual places he needs to take from. Give me a second.
I'm sorry, what was that? I didn't hear you.
Give me a second.
Okay. by the way, while you're doing what you're doing, I wanted to say, uh, I wanted to say that someone in your audience earlier, because I typed in that I was gonna enter. They said that thanks for just even having the balls to enter. So I wanted to say thank you for that to whoever said that.
Yeah, so he misaggregated. Like there have been multiple critiques of his aggregation of data, which mentions that he's just here. Let me pull it up right here. Uh, his analysis aggregates spending figures to the regional national level, thus obscuring disparities within states or within districts. In this, I'll pull up the full paper of the. There's a full paper critique on debunking the way that he aggregated his information. So he just misaggregated the data and came to an improper conclusion because of the way he aggregated the data.
Okay. Um, were you going to read it from the paper?
Oh, I just did.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know. There was another study from 2008 that found basically the same thing. I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess this is conflicting research. I'm sure you have a paper that says it refutes that, but
Yeah, sure. I'll read
I
the
would
whole
have
thing.
to.
In the paragraphs that follow, we provide fresh evidence of racial disparities in education funding using state by state analysis of district level data. We also highlight a new and growing body of evidence, which Richwin ignores, of racial funding disparities within districts. We employ Richwin's basic methodology, which is the potential for shedding light on racial disparities. Wait, I'm going to pull this up on my bigger screen so I can actually read this better.
Wait, was that district level or was that per
They're
pupil?
using both. They're using his methodology and then expanding on it, which has the potential for shedding light on racial disparities, but we make stark different analytic choices along the way. Our choices flow first from an understanding of the fractured nature of U.S. educational funding. School funding systems certainly don't set out to create disparities in school funding across racial categories. That would be illegal, but despite a couple of generations of litigation, court action, and legislation, school districts in high poverty areas are still often funded less generously than districts elsewhere. The problem is that the funding for districts still derives substantially from local property taxes, and state level funding arrangements don't necessarily level the playing field for high poverty districts. Some states, notably Massachusetts and New Jersey, deserve credit for progressive efforts to give high poverty districts more funding from state and local sources than low poverty districts, but other states, including Illinois and New York, fucking can't read that word. Fund wealthy districts better than poor ones. Richwin's analysis would make more sense were federal money a big part of the picture, but it's not. Federal funds account for about a dime of each educational dollar in the typical state. Moreover, most federal funds driven by population and poverty figures do not contribute to racial disparities. Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the largest school program operated by the federal department. Oh, so he's just using federal numbers. He's not even using state numbers. Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the largest school program operated by the Federal Department of Education, distributes money to bolster spending in areas of concentrated poverty. Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, the next biggest program, distributes funding based on shares of children in poverty rates. We focus on non-federal funds devoted to elementary and secondary education because that's where one finds the funding arrangements contributing, albeit indirectly, to any racial disparities. We also focus on current expenditures, the funds used to pay the day-to-day expenses of operating school districts. This focus corresponds with federal funding formulas and with the great majority of work examining resource equality in education, including the Education Trust Funding Gap series, volatility and documented racial inequity in capital expenditures, such as school construction financed by the sale of tax-exempt bonds, create a burden of explanation for researchers choosing, as Richwin does, to fold them in with the current expenditures. He provides none. Richwin made do with just 1 year's expenditures, but it was scarcely greater effort for us to muster 3 consecutive years worth of data. We use consumer price index values to render expenditures from school years ending in 2006 and 2007 in terms of real 2008 dollars. And we copy Richwin in using the Department of Education's comparable wage index to adjust districts' expenditure for variation within and between states in the cost of providing education. We employ the same procedures that Richwin used to create per pupil expenditures for each racial or ethnic group, but we go state by state. A state's per pupil expenditures for a particular racial or ethnic group is a ratio incorporating information from 3 years. The numerator is the sum of the average district per pupil expenditures multiplied by the number of district students representing the racial group in question. So yeah, I mean, they found multiple disparities. He used simply federal data, which they even mentioned in the study is a fraction of where the funding for schools comes from, whereas the bigger portion of their funding comes from state funds. He didn't analyze state funds.
Well,
He only
no,
analyzed.
no, I'm almost certain. I'm almost certain that his data did just go over like the money coming from the government and then going to like per pupil. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost certain that that's what his
No, they
data
literally
does. I
they
don't know.
literally point out that his funding formula was focused on federal funds.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Look, I would have to go over what you just went over. You just read out a lot, and I'm sure I could research. I could type it on Google. Your refutation to your refutation. You know, most science has reputations to it. It's possible. I have another study from 2008 that's found the same thing that that Heritage report found. Um, I'll look into it more. I have to go, but I do want to talk about this more with you. Okay, I'll call you back another time because I know that you were saying earlier that you something about like debates aren't working for you. Um, I don't know what's going on with your channel, but thanks for talking to me about this. Okay.
All right.
All right. Later, man.
Anyway, I feel like I sufficiently countered his points. What do you guys think?